Introduce Amy Schutzer, who will read to us tonight from her second published novel, Spheres of Influence. It's really exciting for me, and I dare say, I'm sorry, what? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you know what, I wrote Fears of Influence. I thought I'd caught myself. Spheres of Disturbance. It's really exciting for me, and I dare say exciting for her as well, to be able to say this is her second published novel. Most novelists never get beyond their first, so this is a great achievement. Spheres of Disturbance takes place on the very last day of Helen's life. The year is 1985, and Helen, whose health is spiraling down, has chosen to end her life on this one particular day. The story is hers, but it also belongs to those who surround her and care about her. These are the ones that she loves and the ones who love her. This group includes her daughter, an art thief, a high-strung housewife and crochet artist, a lesbian poet, and a pregnant Vietnamese pot-bellied pig. The short chapters are told from many points of view. There's Helen's voice, of course, but there's also chapters that deal with Avery and Sammy and Joe and Rosie and Darla and Marjorie and Frances and, of course, Charlotta, the pig. Each of these characters, by turn, reject or accept Helen's decision to die, and they are all struggling with her ending. It's a story about how we can bear to approach or even choose our inevitable end. Amy Schutzer has held numerous jobs: U.S. postal carrier, bookkeeper, legal assistant, cashier, and Nabisco factory worker. Did she work out at that Oreo factory? Oh, in New Jersey. There's one here in Portland, though. I think about Oreos every time I drive by it. But I think she would say that her favorite job of all is the one she's really good at. She's a writer. Her first novel, Undertow, was a Lambda Literary Award finalist, a Violet Quill Award finalist, and chosen by Today's Librarian as one of the best books of 2000. In 2011, her poetry chapbook, Taking the Scarecrows Down, was published by Finishing Line Press. She is a long-standing member of the 29th Street Writers, a group of women who have been writing and encouraging each other for we know it's more than 20 years, we think it's more than 25, and we think it may be as many as 30 years. Her second novel, The Color of Weather, remains unpublished, so really this book she's reading from tonight is really her third novel. And she is currently working on her fourth novel. I'll see if I get the title right. The Autobiography of My True Self, right? It's a pleasure to have her with us tonight. Please join me in welcoming her.
Hi. Well, I'll tell you, I think do I need to turn that on now?
Did you hit it?
Okay, it's on. So I think the hardest job is preparing for a reading. It's not the actual writing. The writing's like a dream compared to this. So, Roberta, thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, next time I'll get the title right.
Well, that's okay. I like Fears of Influence, too. That was pretty good. So thank you all for coming here to help me launch my new novel. And I really want to thank Roberta and Broadway Books, who not only have supported me as a writer, but they've encouraged and hosted hundreds and hundreds of readers and authors over the years. So help me thank them. Okay, so you did such a great intro that I don't really even have to tell you what the book's about, because you kind of get it. And I'm going to read 2 chapters tonight, and then there's going to be a little something extra, and then I'll sign books. So what we need to know is the first chapter I'm going to read is from Helen's perspective, and Sammy is her daughter, and Avery is Sammy's lover. And the Lucky Girl Band is playing at a garage sale, and you'll see a bit of that in the second chapter. And they're playing some tunes, and tonight you're going to get to hear one of their songs. Helen. Soon it will snow. The clouds gather in slow pairs and triplets joining their silk edges. In the chair by the window, Helen sits, legs out in front on the ottoman. There is one slight gap with blue between the clouds. Blue, the color Helen will miss the most. Over the past year, she has compiled a list. The list is why Sammy doesn't want her to talk with Avery, thinks it upsets her when all along it is Sammy being so disconcerted. A word both Helen and Avery agree is perfectly sounded to its meaning, disconcerted. The list of what she will miss is kept in her address book. Sammy won't find it till after. It is broken down into 2 categories. 1, what she will miss about the world. Blue, in the edges of rivers, the throats of bluebells, the sky after summer electrical storms, flowers, every type. Walking at dusk, especially in fall. Clam chowder at that place she can never remember the name of down in Egg Harbor. Her cat Nellie, who has been dead 12 years. Books, the library, wind chimes, Avery, and her poetry. 2, what she will miss about Sammy. It covers a full page. There is nothing she won't miss. Helen looks around her bedroom, light sea green walls, ceiling in sweet cream, such calm colors to float in as on a raft. She picked the paint colors after the last diagnosis. Her doctor sat behind his massive desk like a rampart where orders are given for the war during the battle of cancer, and told her it was back. Her response was, "But there's no breast left to have breast cancer in." He tilted forward in his chair and said, "Doesn't matter." Helen said, "But it was gone, completely gone for 10 years. How does it come back?" What was important, he says, was that they caught it early, like a murderer before he goes out and kills someone else, his exact words, and that they would fight this together. But it wasn't together. Before the first courses of radiation and chemo began, Sammy and Avery painted Helen's room. It took them 4 days, Sammy in white painter's pants, Avery in striped overalls. The 2 of them singing to the radio or asking Helen to join in a round robin of row, row, row your boat. This was the optimistic phase, when a positive attitude seemed all Helen would need to defeat round 2 of the cancer. Life is but a dream. The 3 of them would eat together, Avery bringing over salads, broccoli, green beans, and tomatoes from her garden, cooking what she called whole foods, fresh haddock, brown rice, buckwheat, tofu. To fatten Helen up, Avery would say, and Helen would add, before the slaughter, and they would both laugh at the absurdity of the comment. The kitchen table was the place Helen felt the strongest, the most sure that the cancer would be sent packing back into remission, for how could she not be part of this life? Watching her daughter unfold day by day. Unbearable to think otherwise, and at that point she didn't. The 3 of them would play Monopoly, donning names like Mr. Steal You Blind, Dr. Nimble Thimble, and Boots Mulligatawny. Each of them prayed to own all the railroads. Sammy always bought Park Place. Helen kept to the cheap parcels. Avery was the wild card and kept changing her strategy and usually won. How could Helen not be a part of the banter, the light-heartedness, the continuation of life as a joyous round robin? During the 4 days of painting and the 3 more to allow the room to air out, Helen slept in Sammy's room while Sammy stayed at Avery's. Sammy's bedroom still had the broad red bookcase from her childhood, filled with novels and poetry and textbooks. Her daughter's love of reading matched by her own, and, she thought, encouraged by Helen's 33-year stint as librarian, carrying mountains of books to and from the library. There was a stack on Sammy's nightstand: Margaret Atwood, Janet Kaufman, Virginia Woolf, and Anne Sexton. Helen paged through, read them all. She thought how those books were an unseen strata inside Sammy, like an atmospheric condition. Entering into the same words Sammy had read was a kind of communication, a shared world. It added a glaze. But how could she differentiate the impact? How could the reading of a book make itself visible on Sammy, on her? And yet, she was sure it did. Words like wallpaper, no, like wallpaper paste. The paint dried, the room aired out with the windows open to the late spring gusts. Sammy and Avery put away their painter's clothes. Helen moved back into her bedroom where the colors reminded her of a placid sea. It was not immediate how she knew she would not stay afloat. Like wallpaper paste losing its grip and the wallpaper unmooring, that was the feeling. It began after she returned to her bedroom. Not that she could point to an exact when. It was more a presence of something like wallpaper under wallpaper that begins to reveal itself slowly, so that if Sammy asked, "You doing okay, Mom?" she would answer, "Yes, honey," because at first the presence was obscure, a fog she could believe was a medication side effect, ephemera, unspecified sensation, inklings. That was how her death was arriving. The 3 of them still had dinner together, interspersed Monopoly with Scrabble or Mealborn. Some nights Avery read them poems. Dusk in the window panes, Sammy curled into the couch, Avery on the edge of the cushion, pointing every once in a while at a word she was reading. Helen in the wing-back chair believed Avery knew what Helen was keeping secret from Sammy. It was May. It was the night Avery had read one of her poems. It started, "Beneath the charms, life is a bangle. Attendance has been perfect, odd link to link, except for the lapses, the clasps undoing, then done again, and then the jangle, added charms, for or against." Avery had looked up at Helen as she read. Maybe she was nervous as they were her words, her poem, but no. She was reading to Helen. If Sammy noticed, she said nothing. They clapped when Avery was done, and Sammy said, "Another, another." Sammy, Avery. Helen never imagined such a relationship for her daughter, but look at them. Look, it was May. They were a poem. The clouds pull apart and leave a brilliant pond of blue, but it is a brief clearing. The clouds slink back and fill in the sky. Squirrels race across the electric wires onto the branches of trees. She will miss Sammy ringing the bell on her bicycle when she turns into the driveway, like she does now, riding past the window where Helen sits, enjoying everything she will miss. So now we're going to skip ahead in the book to, we're in the midst of the garage sale. The Lucky Girl band is tuning up, and we're going to meet Charlotta, who is Avery's pregnant Vietnamese potbelly pig, who has taken up refuge in the back of the garage after an encounter with a puppy. We also meet teenagers Darla and Ruth, who are visiting Charlotta. Charlotta settles into her berth of blankets behind the boxes. No need to keep vigil. The puppy is gone. No more wet dog mildew odor. The piglets have also wound down, and her belly is quiet without anxious kicking. The weight of the piglets is centered, the swarm of them interlocking into a density like a boulder in a river. There is the saw of a fiddle hawing back and forth across a short run of notes. The clarinet swims in low before quickening into the higher register. Charlotta adjusts the flaps of her ears to dampen the fiddling about of the instruments. The guitar and mandolin pluck the same strings over and over, each one trying to shift the sourness of the note. She drifts, her eyes soft, staring out the door's window. The red light bulb is on outside and casts a rosy blush. The snow falls through the light like powdered sugar. The scent of wood smoke swirls with the wind that enters each time the front door is open. Wind and wood smoke, snow-tinged, brisk and merry as the river outside. Curly patterns, lovely smells. Her eyes close as if something, the snow, the wind, has closed them for her, and the pinky light from the light bulb has taken up residence inside her. What sweetness to roll in crackly red maple leaves and scout the woods for odorous morsels. There is more mud and fungi in the loot of decay, and Charlotta is drooling when the two girls find her napping. Charlotta senses a rift in her sleep, something in need of her attention. At first it comes to her as rustling, then a draft of musk, like she has smelled on Sammy's wrist, but it is not Sammy. She opens her eyes. Two girls lean over the boxes, chewing, and watch her. The musk smell is mixed with mint. Darla says, "I'd like to be that content." "Oh, Darla, don't be silly," Ruth says. "Contentment is something humans made up to ensure discontent." "Well, still," Darla says. The thing they are chewing is sucked in and out of their mouths like clouds, and Charlotta opens her own mouth, not in imitation, but in want. It is dark out, or the red bulb would not be on. Dark means dinner. Or maybe it did last week, and now it means she has to wait until not only dark arrives, but also stays for a measurement she cannot gauge. The smell of the musk and the mint awakens her, and if she is not careful, it will arouse the piglets to begin their acrobatics. Charlotta closes her mouth. This seems to be the invitation the girls are waiting for. They nudge each other and kneel down on the edge of the blankets. "I could imagine being a veterinarian," Ruth says. "The bigger the animal, the better, like working with circuses, tigers, and elephants." "Ruth, not so loud. We don't want to disturb Charlotta." But Charlotta isn't bothered. She likes Darla and her coat with the fringe on the sleeves and her soft face with the dimple. She grunts. "Wonder what that means," Ruth says. "That you'd make a terrible vet." "You're probably right," Ruth says, "but it certainly isn't outside my capabilities." "Certainly not," Darla says. She lifts her hand, palm open, and holds it close to Charlotta's snout. Charlotta watches Ruth and decides she's prickly but harmless. "They're different than dogs," Darla says. "They're cleaner for one, and Avery told my dad, much smarter." But having pigs as pets, Ruth says, is a little eccentric. Not that that's bad. I wouldn't mind, and probably am already seen that way. "Yeah, probably," Darla says, and scratches Charlotta behind her ear in a slow back and forth motion. The instruments still haven't landed together on the same note. The light from the bulb bounces in Darla's hair almost like sparks. Ruth, with her black hair, seems to absorb the light, her face glowing frosty, but her eyes are the color of mud, and Charlotta wallows there. She's staring at me, Ruth says, like Mr. Johnston does in algebra every time I answer one of his difficult equations, like he's startled I'm even there or wishes I wasn't. I think Charlotta is happy, Darla says. Charlotta is bumped from inside, one piglet waking and stretching its back leg. The stimulation from Darla's scratching has made its way to her belly. It is not a frantic wake-up surge, but more like a pleasurable wave. One bump becomes another. Charlotta shakes her head, her lips scroll backwards. I don't think she's happy, Ruth says. Something happened, Darla says. Go get Avery, Ruth says. She rocks back on her heels as if she's going to run away. It's okay. I don't think anything's wrong. But it could be, it definitely could be. Now I'm sure you would make the world's worst vet. Fine, I'll go. She gets up and knocks one of the empty cardboard boxes over as she leaves. The pink light floods down and the snowflakes have gotten larger. Charlotta swings her bulk up from the blankets and stands in front of Darla. Her breath emits a tiny whistle. She inches closer. Darla begins scratching behind the other ear. The instruments pause, and Charlotta grunts, a note the instruments join to begin their first song.
Ready?
All right. Shook up, her smile's a dangerous ride. I've been up all night with her immaculate lies. Three times, I almost could leave. But what's the point in freedom if my heart isn't free? Sun's up, the true light, and she's going to hide behind the makeshift and the maybe. Oh, did we really try? One time you could have fixed it, she says, but we've always been broken, refusing to mend. course, I would answer questions if anyone had any.
Where did you come up with Charlotta, the Vietnamese pregnant pig? From a real life experience, or
No,
no?
no, so the question was, where did I come up with Charlotta? I'm fascinated by pigs, and I actually went to grade school and played with the granddaughter of E.B. White.
Wow.
So we used to play trolls together. So maybe it was way back then, but they're just an interesting animal, and they are incredibly intelligent, so I really like that aspect.
Speak up, folks. I have a question.
That's my dad! He's gonna be 94 in another month.
Okay. Your first book, Undertow, which I thought was such a lyrical, the writing was so lyrical. And your poetry, frankly, I don't understand poetry at all.
Who does?
But this book is totally different from Undertow. And it takes a little getting into before you start to realize what's actually happening with it. I thought the writing was great, and I hope everybody else thinks the same thing.
He's not biased. Well, different books. I'm sparked by different things, and the thing about this book that I was trying to do that really fascinated me was trying to keep it to one day. That the book takes place over one day. There's some flashbacks, but not that much, because I really like that idea of, and I was thinking about this today, that so much can happen in a day, any day. So that's what I really liked about the container.
I'm so sorry that Robert Altman is dead, because I think he should direct the movie. I love the intermingling and how the same action will be happening but from a different perspective all the time, and all that interlacing was really wonderful.
Thank you.
When's the movie coming out?
Right. Right. Who's playing Charlotta?
I was wondering if the characters developed organically. Did you have a preset idea of kind of how many was the right amount?
Yeah, I don't know. They just all started presenting themselves. And I think then I had to decide which were the main voices I wanted to kind of repeat, since it kind of rotates through their voices throughout the novel. So there were certainly ones that felt important to link each character to a different one who might not have been in the same family. So that's part of it. But really, they just kind of appear, which is a kind of scary when you think about it.
So, how do you get inside the body of a pregnant pig? I mean, that seems very evocative.
I don't know. I mean, I just kind of tried to think about it. Like, if you're down near the ground, like what's down there, and what would a pig find interesting as opposed to a dog, or a cat? Because they're definitely have different, sensibilities of what they're like. And Charlotta really loves Avery's voice, so she's very tuned to that. And they have their little rituals. We've seen that if you have pets, all our pets have certain rituals. So I think I just extrapolated. And I understand that actually the miniature potbelly pigs are making a comeback, that there's like another craze, and it's interesting to see that, because it's like it's never happened before. And I don't know, but they were never that miniature. So I think that was their downfall, is they actually got large, not like as large as a hog, but still pretty big, so.
Giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple hundred pounds, I think.
Yeah, they can get pretty large.
So what about the year? I'd love to hear more about that.
1985. You know, when I placed it in there, it seemed to be sort of a pivotal time in politics in terms of, you know, a lot of artists were really able to, you know, have a fairly decent life without having to put a lot of time into 9-to-5 jobs, or there's CETA grants, there were lots of things that you could tap into, and when Reagan came in, all of that kind of disappeared. So I really wanted to kind of capture some of that topsy-turviness of people who, you know, didn't have money, and what did people do to kind of navigate their way. So that seemed like a good time period. And, you know, before all the technology.
And I have a question. In terms of the development, how many years, since I don't write, I'm just curious how long in the making it took to
write this.
To write the book, and did you start thinking about the theme years before, or how does that develop?
So as Roberta said, there's a second book that hasn't been published, so that one came after the first book. And, you know, as I was polishing that one, this book came up, and I started writing. So I probably wrote on it about 5 years, something like that. Then there's a lot of revision. So then there's, you know, probably add another 9 months to a year revision at this level of towards the publishing end of things. So
About 6 years.
yeah, it's a long process. Yes.
Were you a morning writer or an evening writer? What was like?
Morning or evening writer?
Yeah, what was
Morning.
morning?
I'm a morning person. Yeah. I just don't have the energy at night. So yeah. And one thing a number of years ago that I started doing for myself that's been really important to me as a writer is I take retreats at least 3 times a year, and I give myself 5 days to a week, and I just go away and I write. And I'm nothing but a writer for that time. And that's been really a wonderful gift. Yeah. Yes.
Longhand, tablet,
I write prose on the computer, poetry longhand, and then I put it in. And when I was sort of finalizing the manuscript for the publisher, I was on a retreat, and you know, really I just had to put it, you know, together on the computer and send it. And I said, I'm only gonna write longhand. I'm not gonna get back on the computer. And I sat down. I'm not just gonna write haiku, you know. And it's like I sat down to write, and another novel came out. So I started writing it longhand because I just couldn't bear to get back on the computer. Yeah. But, you know, I must say that I did used to write prose longhand. It's so much easier on the computer. It really is.
I had a question. One of the fascinating things to me about the host of characters are the kind of edgy villains.
It's never all good or all bad, so I wanted to have you know, a diverse range of characters and experience. So when did they appear? That's a good question. I don't remember when Frances made herself known, but she's actually one of my favorite characters. She's the alleged art thief and a sister of somebody else, and she is kind of scheming, and so she's a great foil for a lot of other things, although she also has quite a big heart, so that's... And her and her brother Joe, they're both one of the 9 characters. Their father had actually, he had died, and there's question about how he died. So they each have a very different perspective about it, and so that comes into play, especially as it pertains to Helen. So, and Avery's, a former lover of Avery's, she is one of the people who started a commune, and so yeah, she's not your typical what you would think of, just like oh, everything's great, do whatever you want. She's got some real control issues. So there's, I just tried to bring out different traits that you might not think about with people, and not make them all good or all bad. Okay, so I'm going to sign books. There's some treats back there, lovely petit fours from St. Honore Bakery. And there's even some gluten-free ones for
The
those.
raspberry ones are gluten-free.
Yes,
If you
yes.
want to buy a book and have it signed, please buy it first and then bring it to Amy at the table, and she'll be happy to sign it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.